What is Africa to Me? By Colin Grant. In the poem Heritage, the Harlem Renaissance poet County Cullen posed the question, what is Africa to me? The answer had to be dredged from his suspicion of any nebulous atavistic yearnings towards an African inheritance, because Africa was a book one thumbs, listlessly till slumber comes. That soporific conjuring resonated with me as a child of Jamaican migrants to the UK. Growing up in the 1960s in Luton, I had little concept of being part of the African diaspora. I never heard Marcus Garvey's rallying cry, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. What was there to cheer about? Africa was the site of a continuing tragedy. Starving children with distended bellies one thought about fleetingly when the collection plate came round at Sunday Mass. I'd eavesdrop on West Indian adults as they argued not for the romance of Back to Africa, but rather how the devilish white man had done us all a favour by taking us out of there. Throughout the 1970s, the only Africans I met in Luton didn't gladden the heart either. In their late 20s, these permanent adult students who hung around Luton Technical College seemed like shipwrecked men. The governing idea of Africa as a continuing litany of loss emerged in the news and was reinforced by Alex Haley's popular TV series Roots, which prompted school friends to apologise to me because up till then they'd not been aware of their country's responsibility for the Atlantic slave trade. I was bemused by my friends' responses and paralysed by a kind of excruciating self-consciousness of blackness that I'd never felt before. The landmark 1980s television documentaries by Kenyan scholar Ali Mazrui, The Africans, A Triple Heritage, offered a richer idea of Africa and its history, peppered with ennobling if contentious ideas about Africans' extraordinary capacity to forgive. That virtue, if true, would of course been exploited by the imperial powers in carving up Africa in the 19th century, and was often articulated in Mandela's post-apartheid South Africa during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings as an African Ubuntu. My understanding of Africa has been deepened through reading Wole Soyinka, Ama Ata Edu, and Chinua Achebe. But perhaps the African-American writer and anthropologist Zora Neale Hurston's non-fiction book Barracoon, The Story of Kosala, one of the last living persons abducted and enslaved from Africa to the USA, has been most impactful, as told through a series of interviews with the elderly man himself. Hurston wrote of her shock at Kosala's tale and at the depth of African complicity in the slave trade that did away with the folklore I'd been brought up on, that the white people had gone to Africa, waved a red handkerchief at the Africans, and lured them aboard ship and sailed away. Kosala told Hurston that he'd always dreamed of a return to Africa, and that speaking with her might set straight the record back home in Africa on his disappearance. I want telling somebody who I is, so maybe they go in African soil someday and calling me my name and someone say, yeah, I know Kosala. He was unaware, sadly, that his tribe had likely been wiped out in the raid that led to his abduction. It was with my own excitement of return and some trepidation that 20 years ago I travelled to Africa for the first time for a festival of the Theatre of the Oppressed. I'd chosen well, Burkina Faso, characterised by the motto, the land of incorruptible people. And so it appeared on my arrival. The honesty of everyone I encountered was palpable, as was the collective shame when an individual departed from that narrative. What was Africa to me? No doubt my view, based on a selective perception of the continent's goodness and ancient purity, was romanticised. I still had some way to go, but for decades, as for many of my peers in the diaspora, I'd been exposed to subtle, continual, negative British propaganda about Africa. For me, Burkina Faso was the locus of a competing narrative. Finally, the heart of darkness and despair was trumped by the reassertion of an older, obscured notion of Africa as a beacon of light, of open honesty, that might even have roused County Cullen from his bookish stupor and alienation.